have 3 villages, and we've divided them into like 4 sub-villages within one village. So we have 12 villages. Every part of one village actually grows fruiting trees that are indigenous to that place. So we are growing bear, avla, and things like that.
Mali, where we're just reaching out to landscape designers, not really understanding what goes into the scope of work, what makes landscape design what it is. I have had the privilege of seeing your work in person.
Please help me welcome on stage architect Ravi Vazirani, architect Kunal Maniar.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this little talk. It makes me happy to see most seats full, because it just makes me realize that I have to be competent enough to make sure that the eyeballs are wide open and not sleeping. It's as she said that I've done a couple of these shows and where we are talking, and often it's the toughest time to keep people widely attentive to what you're talking. So I have done one very, very simple thing. I've shifted the focus from me and also gotten my friend Ravi Vazirani, who's just walked in late fashionably, into this show, so that, you know, if I cannot catch the eyeballs, so at least he can. I'm going to start off with a little light-hearted video, which is about a terrace garden. I specifically chose a terrace garden to show you all what it takes to make one, is because we live in a city like Mumbai, and obviously we do not have the luxury of spaces. The only thing that can turn to greens is our balconies, and maybe if you're lucky and if you're rich enough, you can own terrace gardens. This is a small story of a 6,000 square feet terrace that we did in south of Mumbai, close to Cuff Parade. And the story is to tell you all, it's right from the scratch till the end. And it's to tell people that landscape architecture and landscape designing is not just about putting plants, and not just about putting potted plants everywhere and filling it. It's about designing spaces. And it's also beyond designing spaces, it's about your interaction with an architect and what are you wanting to put onto the ground with the architect to sustain your terrace garden that you want to build for the client. There are lots of roles that each and everyone play, and then how do we collaborate with them to make sure that you get a product that looks like one and doesn't feel disintegrated. I'll talk less because I think I would like you all to see the video, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit more, so then it gives some substantial status to what I'm talking. Can we start the video, please? don't know how much of the video was self-explanatory, but I'm just going to take 2 minutes to explain to you that this was a project which actually took a year to complete, but it took 2 years for planning. And our inception into the project was right at the stage when the architectural drawings were made. And we did give an input onto the actual weight required for a terrace garden. This is something for everyone to know, that if we are looking at building a terrace garden, it's always nicer to get involved with the architects and collaborate with them to ensure that you can actually create sunks in the slab, create a kind of method of planting such that it can sustain and the slab can take the weight. These are integral things, possibly also for drainage, for waterproofing, and these are all small, minute details that we looked into so that we could do this kind of a terrace garden within a year's time, but it took a lot of ground preparation. So the bottom line is obviously that you may want the earth, but it does not happen is because we have not sustained the required parameters for it. That is something as landscape architects and architects, most of them in the fraternity out here who are listening to me, I would suggest that please do collaborate with us, because this is something which will go a long way and help us beautify the city in a unanimous way.
I've decided to keep this very impromptu. Kunal has no clue what questions are coming his way, much to his dismay. And Kunal, let's keep the answer short, crisp. Okay, so if you were to describe your design style in 3 words, what would they be?
I would say I like doing landscapes which are restrained, maybe poetic, I would say, and I like adding an element of quirk right at the end of my project, somewhere in it. So I would say restrained and poetic and slightly quirky.
How do you find inspiration for your designs?
I already answered him.
I know, but now it's not my fault. No? They should have checked.
Well, I would say travel, food, fashion. I would chronologically put it that way too.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and I know 10 is the right answer, how anal are you?
Well, I would say 11.
I've seen your work. I've seen it in person. And, I mean, I'm a fan. What makes your designs so special? What do you think that it takes to do what you do? I think it's about being, it's entering a zone. Every person, every creative person does tend to do that, Ravi. That, when I'm 46, and when you spend 22 years doing your work in your career, you want to then push limits and get into zones and territories that you've not been into, and then be anal about those elements and focus on them, and that is what makes a design special. I'll give you a simple example. I'll make it crisp. I think that ship has sailed.
I mean, some things like that need an answer. Otherwise, people think we're crazy. Like most people do driveways and then they put these cemented curbs and things like that. There were 2 projects. You came to one of them to see it, and we actually just put cobblestones and we removed the curb from the sides and just let the plantation come and hug the driveway. For me, that's a design high, and that for me, it just makes me feel nice because I've actually decluttered human intervention, which was going on for so many years, and I mean, we've just gotten rid of things that were not wanted.
And how challenging is it to convince clients to do this? To believe in your vision? I think the challenge is not in the clients. The challenge is with you guys. It's damn tough. You're an architect. You're an interior designer. Now, having said that, I mean, of course, you're breaking paths, right? So it's not conventional. You're not going the right traditional way. So of course, you're going to definitely have spaces that you're entering into, which will require, some kind of, a turbulent effect with people, and then you have to work around it, just as I told you from my previous example. Or like what Vivek spoke about, the percentage ratio. You try telling a builder that you want 90% of softscape and just 5 or 7% of hardscape, he'll throw you out of the project and never get you back. But which builder is coming to you not knowing that it's going to be an expensive project? It's not about the expensive part. It's also about expense is one thing, but it's also about changing mindset. Yeah. I understand, but I'm saying also changing mindsets of people. That's the tough one. Okay, if your landscape design starred in a late night talk show, Kunal, who would be the host and what would be the opening monologue?
I would definitely make you the host. That is one thing. You're a very safe player. You're a friend. And I can only see a conversation like this happening between the two of us. Maybe a couple of them also, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't see myself anyone. I don't know what the monologue would be. I'm too daft at this moment to answer that.
I think it would be, do you have a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, an ultimate guilty pleasure when it comes to unconventional design materials. I know you've already answered variations of those, but what would be that one unconventional design material?
I would say the use of brass I have been doing for the past few years, but my current obsession has been pyrite. I know it's flammable. I know that it doesn't last outside. We're doing a lot of research on it, but it excites me because it's got that understated sheen in it. It's raw, but it's yet refined. You get what I mean? It's like having a salted caramel ice cream. You get best of both, and I'm really dying to use it in my landscapes.
If not a landscape designer, what would you rather be?
I love this fashion designer called Rajesh Pratap Singh, and we often have that conversation because he loves plants and I love fashion, and I keep telling him that why don't you switch and turn into my shoes and I go into yours, because I would love to do that.
If your landscape designs had a bad boy-girl reputation, what scandalous story would we all be hearing? We can come back to questions.
Yeah, we can come back. I need to think about it.
Tell us about a time when you had to navigate an unexpected design constraint, and how did you turn that into an opportunity?
Well, we were doing a terrace garden in Worli, and it was planned to be a full-on swimming pool on the top of the terrace, and the whole slab was casted like 1.5 meters below the plinth level of the lift lobby level. And we took it to our advantage because actually the Vastu didn't allow us to put the swimming pool there because the time when it was cast, obviously the Vastu was not in its place, and then the client got in the Vastu. But we actually put in 20 feet tall trees everywhere, wherever we wanted, because we had every bit in space and the sunk. And you know, when you have a design which has sunken planter, the space starts looking more crisp. It doesn't look bulked up with all those humongous planters. The sleekness of the design shows in a little better. So it came to my advantage, and I think that was one thing.
Nice. Can you tell us about a project where the local culture or the history heavily influenced your design approach?
We're doing a project currently in Khajuraho. I haven't finished it though, but we formulated a very, I would say it's not innovative, but I would say it's a system where we are actually doing work within villages, and we are helping them landscape the place only to create a barter system. So I'll explain that to you in a little short way. We have 3 villages, and we've divided them into like 4 sub-villages within one village. So we have 12 villages. Every part of one village actually grows fruiting trees that are indigenous to that place. So we are growing ber, avla, and things like that, which probably people in urban cities don't eat. But the whole idea and the effect is to get all the produce in each and every village on the weekend, maybe on a Friday or Saturday, I don't know which day do they do that, and share and barter. So maybe you have avla and I want jackfruit, and I'll give you 1 jackfruit and you take back avla. So there is no exchange of money, but only interchange of product, and that to something that is indigenous. So that is something which is very close to my heart, because this is something what happened during Mohenjo-daro and Harappa time. So it's not something that I've innovated, but it's just going back to our roots, using indigenous produce and devoid of money. So it's just going back to our roots.
Nice. What's the most extravagant element you've ever integrated into landscape design? And I know there have been a few.
Well, I have always been a rebel, even as a child. So, you know, I was always told when I entered this industry that marble is not meant to be used outside. You can't use brass outside. You just stick to using kota, kadappa, shabad, and things like that. Now, you know, the rebel in me got to me, and of course, I listen, Classic Marble Company is not sponsored this line of mine, but I'm just saying that I heavily worked with Amit, and we churned out so many different finishes on marbles, and I enjoy working with that. And actually, if you see, half of Italy has so much of marble that's just strewn around, even as cobbles or on floorings and all. So I don't understand why do people consider, I would say, why would you even want to consider marble extravagant? I'm saying it extravagant is because India believes that you can't use marble outside.
If you could design a landscape for any fictional character's home, who would it be and why?
I have two actually, I would think of. I would actually create a landscape for. As a kid, I was always intrigued by Tom and Jerry, obviously, and the little hole that Jerry had to go into his little hole. I would love to landscape that space within that. It's just a quirky thing to see. And the other one is just the opposite. I would say Game of Thrones. I mean, everyone's watched that. Maybe create a garden for those dragons. Because if at all there's another season which cannot come by, but I would love to do that.
Describe a time when your design transformed a space beyond your expectations, something that you thought would not really.
This one, it's bang on time. Like, can we pause this for a moment? Is it possible to pause this? So this was something, again, the rebellion in me got in. Like, so many times I would see over my career in so many years, I've seen, interior designers going to the Milan Fair, picking up all these lovely chandeliers and things like that. But literally in landscape, what do I get to do? Do I ever have something like that exotic to do or make or create a space which can actually have that? And then we researched and we found these ferns which are actually roughly around 2.5 meters in height. And we created this space using these ferns, and they are my chandeliers for me.
Share a moment when you had to think on your feet to solve a design challenge during a project.
And get anyone at the moment.
Okay, what's your take on collaborations, Kunal?
Oh, well, it's...
Okay, how was it collaborating with me to make furniture for your space?
Terrible. Terrible. Two anal people working together, can you imagine? Like, I mean, it was... But yeah, I mean, collaboration is something I look at in today's day and age, keeping your ego aside, which is the world's toughest thing to do. I'm the first contender to it, so I don't want to blame anyone. Everyone, I think, if you are in the field of design, and design is about passion, and if you have passion, the other side of passion has a bit of ego amalgamated to it. It cannot get separated. Over a period of time, if you're able to reach a semi-zen state where you can push your ego a little bit, collaboration is the best way of working. Like I did a terrace with Talati Pantaki 15 years back, and with Mr. Talati, working with him was such a pleasure that it was a collaboration. 15 years back, we did a terrace on the top floor and the entire building. At that moment, people thought that, you're making all these planters and it cannot sustain and it will not live. But 15 years down the line, obviously it is yet sustaining, is not just because of our expertise, but because of also his belief in us, and he gave us what we wanted. And that's a perfect example for a collaboration which has stood the test of time.
What's your ultimate design dream that's so wild, it might just redefine the industry? Go crazy.
I always have dreamt of, again, it's a part of me that's a rebel, but I've always dreamt of why are we only planting on flooring and surfaces like vertical surfaces with those funny green walls? Why can't we do anything on the ceiling? And I'm literally looking at, we're trying to work on a project actually where we have xerophytic plants which are just coming down from the ceiling, and everything else becomes devoid of any landscape material. It's an ideal case where you don't have space, and if you have a 700 square feet terrace, for example, if I as a landscape architect ask you to give away 300 square feet out of that for my planting, in south of Bombay, you're not going to allow me to do that because it's translating into real estate space, right? But if I'm going to go vertical, even in balconies, that would be like a miracle to achieve.
Nice. Okay, spill the tea on a design trend that you secretly can't stand. Bonus points if it's still making its way into projects.
I hate artificial plants. I can't stand.
Kunal, that's not even something that's not an acceptable answer.
You should send me these questions a little bit before I would have rehearsed them. I'm not getting anything. But yeah, I would say I also detest using, people want to use wood and then they don't want to use real wood. I understand. They don't even want to use the engineered plastic wood. Now they want to use those tiles which look like wood. I'm sorry if there's any tile person out here. But listen, why would you want to fake it? We are all designers. Why can't we just use, this time around in that project that you saw of mine, what we did was we cut a stone, laid it in a format of a wood and gave an illusion of wood. But why replicate wood? I mean, that's being cheap, right? I mean, why would you want to do that? We as designers have so many options. And we're the ones who are actually promoting it also in the second place, that keep using that,
So no shortcuts, basically. Why take shortcuts?
Correct.
Okay. We've all had those designer showdown moments. Share one with us when you outstyled a colleague. And we know you've got some good comebacks.
I'll leave that for later. Come on, I'm not answering that one.
Okay. If your designs could talk, which snarky comments would they throw at less imaginative landscape designers?
Sorry, say again?
If your designs could talk,
Huh.
what snarky comment would you put out there for less imaginative designers? Like you just spoke of the artificial wooden floors.
These are damn tough questions. Pass. Come on now.
Are we allowed to pass?
Of course I am. You're asking me 30 questions.
Ever had a client where the client knows best moment that ended up with a design disaster so epic?
Well, lots of those kind of moments where the clients don't agree to what we want to do. Eventually, it leads into a disaster. There was this one project I remember very clearly where the
Get
client...
bitchy, huh?
Sorry?
Get bitchy, spill the beans.
Of course, I'll give you the client's name. I'll give you the interior designer's name. I'll give you everything. I'll give you all the gossip. There was this project in New Delhi that we were doing. It was a pool. We requested the client not to use this. I'm not going to give a product name because it's not nice to criticize a product directly as a product brand name. But it was amorphous and crystalline, and you could do it seamlessly. And in New Delhi, because of the salinity levels being high, we suggested to the client, do not do that. It's only because it peels off. And they didn't listen, and it was a massive, I think, it was a lake. It was not even a swimming pool. You know how Delhi goes crazy with, sorry Vivek, I mean, I know you're Delhi, but Delhi goes bizarre with making things really opulent, out of scale. It was over 1 lakh square feet of a pool, a swimming pool, and we had to rip that whole thing out and redo again because that crystalline thing really didn't work.
Felt good?
Well, yeah, I did feel nice. It always massages your ego and lets you know and revalidate that you're doing something right. But, to be fair, even we make a lot of mistakes and a lot of blunders. Architects make a lot of mistakes and blunders and then call us on to put a plant there and fix that problem. Don't forget that.
Why are you pointing at me?
You're an architect, you're an interior designer. I know you won't shoot me alive. If I do that, they'll come and take a dagger and kill me later.
Okay, speaking of architects and designers, a wish list of designers you'd like to work with. Give us 3 names and tell us why.
Architects or landscape architects?
Just designers. Let's not categorize people.
There's this Brazilian landscape architect I would suggest if anyone. Thank you guys. There's a house full right now. I can see that. I would say if there's even 1% of the work that you like, you must see what Alex Hanazaki does from Brazil. He's fantastic. He's superb, very underrated. I would love to work with him. I would love to work and collaborate with a landscape architect. I'm actually dying to do that. I'm so crisp in my career at this stage that I have no inhibitions working with another landscape architect on the same project without any qualms because I'm super confident that I'll be able to do a good job and learn out of him and maybe teach something in turn. I would love working with Bill Bensley. He's a landscape architect too. I'll give you the architect names also. I would love to work with Bill Bensley is because I feel somewhere in me, I have a lot of me that's a rebel, but I don't have that quirk element in me as much as possibly he would have, but I would love to have that in me. So I would love to work with him just to learn that quirky element. Not getting the third name, sorry. Architects.
It doesn't have to be an architect.
Okay,
anybody. Okay, let's make it fun. 3 people you don't want to work with.
Keep quiet. I'm not giving that to you ever in this lifetime.
Okay, let's go back to the questions that you have not answered.
Come on, stop it now.
Okay, one final question, Kunal. What advice would you give to aspiring landscape designers? I know it's a boring question, but why do you think landscape design is not as, why do you think we have this general misconception, Mali, where we're just reaching out to landscape designers, not really understanding what goes into the scope of work, what makes landscape design what it is? I have had the privilege of seeing your work in person. I told you I was blown away. It was wonderful to get to experience that, not as an architect, not as an interior designer, just as a general observer, just someone who could take it in. So if you had to sort of tell people, aspiring designers, what do you think it is that people need to do?
I think the most important thing is to get your technicalities right. And it's a boring thing to start with, but I think if any of my works you all have seen, if you all resonate to or anything, is literally where I started my career 22 years back. My first project was a solo project with Talati Pantaki, and I remember how aggressively I have sat with Mr. Talati and the other partners to ensure that we get what we want, right from the casting of slab to the weight to everything, to create a garden that you want. For beginners, I would say, rather than focusing on the design, the primary importance that one must give to is that you have to envisage the end product and come back with that end product and give it and share it with the other consultants on board to make them realize what you want to achieve, rather than just focusing on design. Or maybe probably, like, I'm just giving you a very narrow example. Like, most people want to talk about materials. You don't have a design in place, but you want to talk that you're going to do a flooring which is terrazzo, or you're going to do a flooring which is travertino and things like that. But that's all embellishment, right? It has to come later. You need to first talk about space planning. You need to first talk about its technical aspects of drainage and things like that, so that your final dream can be inbuilt. So my one very big giveaway to anyone aspiring to be a landscape architect is focus on your design details, because that is what will eventually get your design going. I mean, if you do it in any other way, it's just going to be gimmicky, and then it's going to be about putting 10 potted plants here, getting a bench, getting a Paula Lenti sofa and putting it up here and just dolling up the space. There are two very different ways of looking at spaces. If you're considering about creating spatial landscape experiences, then you need to go into it and not just be superficial about it.
Nice. And one final question, which you did not answer. I'm just going to change it. What's the most scandalous rumor you've heard about yourself?
It's not a rumor. I think it's true, and I would be okay at this stage in my life to even admit it. They all find me very expensive, and I feel I'm not at all a landscape architect who's very expensive. I feel today, if you're creating a product, I look at it that way, that if you're creating a product which does get appreciated, you have the right to charge an intellectual property for your worth. And if you do not value yourself, then nobody else will value. And this is, I mean, a lot of people would be saying that, but I also look at that, Ravi, in all these years, I've realized that in a population of, how many are we, 10 billion? And if I want 10 projects a year, am I not going to find those 10 people in a year who can afford me and who can see the kind of work that I do? So how does it terminate into an expensive proposition for people? I mean, that's why I call it a rumor, because people who work with me then realize that obviously what we put on the table does substantiate that expensive tag or whatever that you call it.
So you're worth it.
Yeah, obviously I'm worth it. Oh, scandalous rumor. Okay. Listen, that's it.
Come on.
I can't remember it. I mean, at the top of my head.
Okay, I think you've been a very good sport. Thank you, Kunal.